Okay, we're back again. So originally this is what the pod from the original OME Solar would look like. You'd have, like I said, when I took off the motors, you'd have the blue, black, and red, and you can change any of these wires to make them clockwise or counterclockwise. So, and what I did to get this off, so generally instead of trying to take off, they've got a lot of solder, big blob of solder. Main concern is that in here, I don't know if it's hard to see that, but there are IC chips that are actually behind each of these connections that come from the motor. And to try to use a solder iron to try to loosen this up, you have to be very careful that you don't have some of the solder just melt into the connection of the IC. If they touch, you're done. So what I did was, instead of having to try to loosen it all up, what I did was I cut it. Take your cutters and cut them really close. Each of them, cut them to get them off and loosen them up. So now we're going to go, once I've cut them, they're loose. So here's how I did to get these motors off. On here, you're going to notice that on each of these pods you're going to have where they've took this plastic housing that's over here. This plastic housing is what this motor sits in, and they have these dots here. They look like dots, and what they did was they melted, they came up probably like little studs, and they melted it so it keeps the housing connected to the board. So what we're going to do is we're going to reuse this. We're going to take our hot iron, and usually you can use a pencil type one. I'm going to use one that I've already did because I want to change the motor, because this is the one that came off my Hercules drone, which crashed, and I believe there's extra vibration, so I'm going to just use this as an example as how I did it. So take the hot iron, you're going to grab, you're going to kind of use your fingers to try to lift it, and what you do so you can keep this from damaging it, you kind of make a circle. You go around it with a circle around the edge of it, and you just try to make it into a point if you can. Try to make it into a point. You don't want to go too hot on the solder iron, because then what's going to happen is that you're going to damage the plastic, and then you'll have to figure a way to keep it together. So what's going to happen is, as you try to make it into a point, and what you're trying to do is trying to make the, see this one here, and you're going to reuse it. Once you make it into a point, you're kind of like, what you're doing is you're taking the hot iron, you're pushing the plastic towards the center of it, so that this way you can pull it off and then reuse it. This is, I think this is like a 15-watt solder iron is what this is. There, one of them just popped out. Let's go to the next one. Here's the other one. So they popped out, and you're going to push them right back in place and just melt it back in there. This one, do the same thing with this one here. Just be careful that you don't touch any of the electronics on here, so you don't end up causing a problem. So this one's going to come out. So you try to kind of push force upwards to try to pull it out as it's heating up, the plastic. There we go. See, it popped right out. Alright, so you see what I did? Now these little posts, we're going to push them back in place again, because we're going to reuse them, and we're going to take the hot iron and we're just going to melt it and make it flat so it stays firm on the board. Now you got a ferrite right here, which actually is for interference. We're not going to take this off. We're just going to leave it because it's actually, it has a glue on here to keep it on there. We're not going to move that at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our soldering iron, the one that's a little heavier, and I use this kind right here, which is this one has, it's 150 watts. Now you can probably go with 120. So what I did was, you generally be very careful and heat up each wire. This is when we put it back on. I'm taking this one off. Since we cut the one off of our original motors, I'm going to show you what to do. Okay, let's take this one off here. Alright, so now I'm going to put this down and we're going to slide these wires out. This is what you're left with, alright, with the board. And this is what I was telling you about, to be very careful, because you got these ICs right here, and this one is really close to these legs, these last ones, so you want to really be careful about this. Now what I did was I took some solder. Instead of trying to melt this big blob of solder, I took some solder, and what I did was I added just a tiny bit on here, so when you go to put the motors back in place, it'll melt the new solder and it'll be easier to connect to it. And that's how I did that, so when I start putting it back together again, you're going to see that. Alright, so you're going to see a screw underneath the housing on this. This is the old motor, and we're going to go ahead and take that screw off. We're going to pull it off, and you see how the wires go through? It's sitting this way, and it kind of fits through this hole here on this side, comes out, because they're going to come back through this ferrite right here. Okay, so this motor's still good. It's just that it, like I said, it's got that little vibration. So this is the new motor. Now remember, hopefully we get it back in the right direction. If not, then we just reverse any two wires, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut, because this comes long. So what we're going to do is we can match it up this way here, and we're going to cut off, let's say about right here. You don't want to make them too long, so we're going to cut. Alright, so let me get my my meter, actually my measuring device, so I can tell you how long these are. You basically try to keep them the same length. You don't want to have them hanging over. So these are about the same length, and then what we're going to do is we're going to just peel off a very little piece off here. Alright, like that. I mean real little, because we don't want to end up touching those ICs. That's one of the biggest problems that could occur. If you ruin that, then it's very difficult to get it cleaned up without causing any further damage. So you get your soldering iron, and what you're going to do is you're going to put some solder on these ends right here. It's enough just to, there you got that one. Okay, and go to the next one. Try to watch out for these wire hairs that are coming out. You don't want to have any of them hanging out while you're soldering on there to touch any of the electronics. And heat this one up here. Okay, and let's go to the last one. Okay, and you got an excess amount of solder, just try to knock it off if you can. You don't want to put any extra solder. Let's see if I can. Alright, excess solder, take it off. This last one that I just did, I want to cut off a little bit more because it seems a little bit too long. So just cut off a little bit. You want to really just have it really small. So let me go ahead and get my my millimeter measuring tool, and I'll show you how long these are. So I'm going to put you on pause, and I'll be right back.